He bought an old ship, but found an alien mother and child hiding inside. The scrapyard was a graveyard of forgotten dreams, where rusted hulls leaned against each other like ancient tombstones. A thin drizzle had turned the dirt path into mud, clinging to boots and hopes alike. David Kellan, retired Earth Force engineer, moved between the broken shells with a practiced eye. He had enough credits saved from a lifetime of service to buy something modest, maybe even refit it for small cargo runs. Just enough to keep himself busy and away from the silence of his empty apartment. "Got anything that still breathes, Marco?" David asked, stopping in front of the squat office built from shipping containers. Marco, the scrapyard's owner, scratched his chin, eyeing David with a half-smile. "Got a fixer-upper, old long-haul freighter. Rusty as hell, but bones are good. Just came in from a repo job in the outer colonies. You want to look?" David nodded, and Marco led him across the lot to a weather-stained ship, its hull scorched by time and micrometeor impacts. The freighter had a bulbous engine pod and a long spine of cargo holds. Ugly, but it called to something in David's gut. Maybe it was the promise of a second chance. Marco thumbed the ramp control. The hatch hissed open with surprising smoothness, stairs clanging down. Power core shot, but the life support still works. "She's got spirit," Marco offered. David climbed the ramp, flashlight cutting through the shadows. The inside smelled of rust and oil, mixed with something faintly sweeter, like dried flowers or spice. He moved through the cargo bay, metal grating echoing underfoot, past half-open crates and cracked display screens. A whisper. Soft. Too soft to catch words, but enough to stop him mid-step. David's light swept over the corner of the bay. Nothing. Just a collapsed crate spilling packing foam. He frowned and pressed deeper into the freighter, following the spine to the crew section. In the mess hall, tables lay overturned, dishes scattered like relics of a hasty departure. His light passed over a hatch labeled maintenance. It looked freshly scratched around the edges. David approached carefully. The whisper again, this time clearer. Two voices. One, a soft, melodic language he didn't recognize. The other, smaller, trembling. Heart pounding, David opened the hatch. In the cramped space beyond, huddled against the bulkhead, were two figures. A woman with skin the color of pale stone, hair white as frost, and eyes wide with fear. Clutching her hand was a small child, equally pale, equally terrified. They wore rough cloth garments, torn and stained. Dirt smudged their faces and limbs. The woman instinctively shielded the child, her gaze locked on David like a cornered animal. David lowered his light, hands raised. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, voice soft despite the shock racing through him. "Who are you?" The woman hesitated, then spoke in halting standard. "Please don't sell us." "Sell?" The word twisted David's gut. "I wouldn't. I swear." "But how long have you been here?" "Days," she whispered. Her voice carried exhaustion and something older, desperation. "We hid when slavers boarded our colony ship. They took the others. We escaped, found this freighter. And you've been hiding ever since?" She nodded, drawing the child closer. The little one looked at David with wide, silent eyes, clutching the woman's arm like a lifeline. David took a slow breath, the weight of the moment sinking in. He'd come here for a ship to run cargo. Instead, he'd found a story of survival and two lives hanging by a thread. "Do you have names?" he asked gently. "Lyra," the woman said, voice shaking. "And this is my daughter, Elin." David returned to Marco, trying to steady his racing thoughts. "I'll take the freighter," he said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. Marco raised an eyebrow. "Didn't even check the engines, huh?" You must have fallen in love with her lines. Something like that, David muttered, signing the purchase agreement. Paperwork done. David walked back aboard, pulse loud in his ears. The freighter felt different now, not just a pile of rust and bolts, but a sanctuary. Lyra and Elin hadn't moved from their hiding place. David crouched in the doorway. I own this ship now, he said quietly. You don't have to hide anymore. Come out. You're safe. Lyra's eyes narrowed with disbelief. You would let us stay? Of course. But it might be better if we talk properly in the mess hall. Get you something to eat. The promise of food overcame caution. Lyra guided Elin into the open, thin limbs trembling. David's heart tightened at how small the girl looked and how fiercely Lyra kept her hand around her. In the mess, David found emergency rations. He heated a pack, passing it across the table. Lyra sniffed it, suspicious, then took a careful bite. Elin followed suit, her hunger quickly overpowering fear. As they ate, David watched quietly. They were alien, yes, but also unmistakably alive, fragile, real. The same bruises of survival any refugee would wear. Why were you afraid I'd sell you? David asked, voice low. Lyra hesitated. Because many would. A mother and child easy profit on frontier worlds. We heard the traders speak before we hid. We know what happens to the lost. David's jaw tightened. He'd seen enough ugliness in the galaxy to know she was right. I won't let that happen, he said. You have my word. Days turned into a week. David worked to patch the freighter's systems, his hands reacquainted with the grease and hum of old machinery. Lyra kept to herself, always watching, always ready to run. But little Elin was curious. She would appear silently at the doorway, pale hair falling across her face, watching David work. At first, she would vanish if he looked at her. But then, slowly, she dared to step closer. Want to hand me that spanner? He asked one morning, voice gentle. She hesitated, then picked up the tool, placing it in his open hand. Her small fingers brushed his calloused palm. Thank you, Elin, he said, smiling. She ducked her head, hiding a shy smile of her own. By the second week, Elin began to follow David everywhere. In the evenings, he'd sit with a mug of coffee while Lyra and Elin shared quiet conversation in their native tongue. David didn't understand a word, but the sound was soothing, a melody of survival. Lyra began to relax, shadows lifting from her eyes. You're kind, she said one night, voice soft but stronger. Not many would be. Not kindness, David replied, staring into his mug. Just what should be done. Lyra tilted her head. You've lost someone, she observed gently. My wife, he admitted, voice barely a whisper. Years ago. A raid. Off-world. I couldn't get to her in time. Lyra reached across the table, resting a pale hand over his. Warmth bloomed where she touched him, unexpected and fragile. We all carry scars, she murmured. David found parts in the scrapyard and long nights blurred into days. Slowly, the freighter came alive again. Lights flickered to steady glow, consoles booted up with familiar beeps and scrolls of data. One morning, David gathered his courage. Lyra, when the ship's ready, what will you do? Lyra's gaze turned to Elin, who played on the floor with a makeshift doll. I only wish for her to be safe, she said quietly. We have nowhere to go. Our people are scattered, maybe gone. You could stay, David offered, heart pounding at the words. This freighter, it could be our home. I could take jobs. Small runs. Enough to keep us going. Lyra's eyes widened, tears gathering at the edges. You would take us with you? You already belong here, he said. Both of you. Elin looked up from her doll, sensing the change in the air, and smiled. A real, bright smile that lit up her pale face. The day they first powered the engines, the freighter vibrated with life. Smoke curled from ancient vents, but the hum was steady. David stood at the helm, Lyra beside him, Elin perched on a crate. "We need a name," David said, glancing at Lyra. Lyra thought for a moment. "Home," she whispered. "Whatever happens, this will be our home." David nodded. "Home it is." He keyed the controls. The rusted freighter shuddered, then lifted gently from the ground. The scrapyard shrank below, and the sky opened wide, a promise of stars and second chances. They made short runs at first. Small cargo, stationary supplies. The credits were thin, but enough. At night, David taught Elin old Earth lullabies. Her laughter echoed through the corridors, chasing away the ghosts of the past. Lyra watched, a quiet gratitude in her eyes. And over weeks, something unspoken grew between her and David, a warmth, a shared resolve born from scars and hope alike. One evening, after a run to a small moon, Lyra joined David at the observation deck. Stars sprawled before them, an endless tapestry of possibility. "You saved us," she said softly. David shook his head.
"No."
"We saved each other." Lyra's hand brushed his, fingers intertwining. For a heartbeat, all the pain and fear fell away, replaced by something gentle and beautifully human. In the quiet that followed, David looked at the freighter's reflection in the viewport, battered, scarred, but flying. He'd thought he was just buying a ship. Instead, he'd found a family. And as the stars wheeled around them, David Kellan realized the galaxy was still full of second chances for those willing to take them.